Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio with
Alek.
We did it right this time!
Woo!
Okay, well actually it depends on like what order I put these episodes out, because out of context this won't make any sense at all.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, Mitch in the future, edit these episodes and then make sure this one's second.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, right? Okay, good. All right, so on today's episode, we're not talking about the future. Well, maybe actually, depending on if you're going to have a future failed commander.
Yeah.
But on this episode, we're going to talk about what makes one of your commander decks a forever deck or a failed commander deck, one that you have to take apart at some point. So, I mean, I think we've all been through this, right? I mean, I guess if you're a brand new commander player, hi, welcome to Commander. You probably have some decks that you think are going to be your forever decks, and they're not. Some of them are going to go away. Some will be your forever decks.
Yeah, well, it's always a dreaded decision too, especially with ones that you feel proud that you've made, or ones that you have played with for most of your time playing Magic. It's hard to de-sleeve those cards and put them away.
Well, the worst part is with Commanders is that there's more cards. It's literally 100. You have to like look through like individually. Go, oh no.
Yes.
Other formats a lot less.
Yeah, and you have to sort all those cards again later. Yeah, it can be a mess for sure.
It can be. Yeah. So what you're saying is we should never dismantle any deck ever. No. Just put them in a closet and just like leave them in there. And then 10 years later, be like, oh, I remember these. Yeah. I used to play my Stacks deck.
Oh gosh.
Back when I had friends.
Yeah.
Don't know why I lost my friends.
That's because you have a closet full of deck boxes.
Stacks is fine for playgroups that are okay with it. For playgroups that aren't okay with it, it's not okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start things off with one of your forever commander decks. Which one are we starting off with?
Yeah, so the one that's, has been a forever deck ever since I built it was my cycling deck, which uses Kydel, Chosen of Krufix, and Ravos Soul Tender as my commanders.
Okay.
Kydel is a 2 green and a blue for legendary creature human wizard 2/3. And it taps to add 1 colorless to your mana pool for each card you've drawn this turn. And has the partner ability. Obviously, because it's connected with Ravos Soul Tender for 3 white and a black. Legendary creature Human Cleric for as a 2/2. As flying, other creatures you control get +1/+1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, there's a couple of elements to me why this is a forever deck. One of it's emotional, like this is my first non-net deck that I built, something that I took the idea of wanting to build a cycling deck on my own and just was like, hey, I enjoyed playing this. I think it was Hour of Devastation draft or whatever, where just there was a bunch of cycling cards. Like, I'm interested in this.
I like just discarding whatever card and then getting a different one.
Yeah,
again and again and again.
It was featured in a Pro Tour match, if I remember correctly, as well, and so it was just kind of something I wanted to build for myself. And the strategy of this deck really is to just cycle as much as you can. It utilizes a lot of creatures that have the cycling ability, and then the end game being reanimating all of them at once using effects like Rise of the Dark Realms, which is a 7 black sorcery that says put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control.
I don't think anyone's ever heard of that card.
No. Why would you? It's very
niche. Yeah, very, very specific.
Very unique. Yeah. Yeah. So part of the reason why this this kind of strategy can kind of seem repetitive, I think, a lot of times. And while the main strategy of my deck does in fact follow a similar pattern most of the times, where I cycle and I mass reanimate, and that ends up being fairly consistent, I do appreciate about this deck that there are still additional ways built in not to win that don't make it terribly boring.
I've never found that deck to be boring at all. In fact, I find that it's very impressive, all the crazy things that are going on with it, and the different outs that you have with that deck are absurd.
Right. Well, and like a couple of those additional, ways of winning is you go wide in other ways. Alenda and Azor, a recent card, has been amazing in this deck because it synergizes really well with the fact that I'm trying to draw a lot of cards each turn. But then with its third ability, where it says at the beginning of your end step, you may pay 4 life. And if I do, I create a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn, I can go wide really quickly turn after turn with that.
Absurdly quickly. So massive card draw potential on that, as well as just massive go wide potential. And it's a 6/6 with flying and ward too. And as I've said before, Wizard just loves slapping ward onto things these days.
Well, and this deck even incorporates a few different anthem effects as well. You know, not exclusive to Ravos. You know, just given that he's in command.
I always forget about that anthem from Ravos.
Yeah, it's easy to forget, but you know, it's really impactful, especially when you're trying to swing in with creatures to end the game. So, but addition to Elenda and Azor, I've got Decree of Justice as well, which is just another cycling card that works well to churn through your deck, but it can back up as a big X spell to flood the board with angels, or even just the 1/1s to make big attacks with.
100%.
And then honestly, my favorite addition to this deck recently is White Sun's Twilight, which is an X white sorcery spell that says you gain X life, and then just you create X 1/1 of those little might with toxic effects, and then if X is 5 or more, you destroy all of their creatures, which is kind of like a martial coup, if I remember correctly, from the old set. But
with poison.
Yeah, but with poison. And so I'm never one to like super be gung-ho about winning with poison, but if it means that
if you're finishing the game out, you finish out the game. Like, when you make 40 of those tokens, like, you deserve the win.
Yeah, you're gonna get there. So
yeah, exactly.
So it's what the point I was trying to make is it's got a lot of different ways of winning besides just the main. So you've got a lot of backups, you got a lot of more unique ways to pursue if you decide that you want to go that way.
Yeah, and if you ever play against Alek's deck, when you think you've stopped it, you haven't.
Right.
So
right.
You literally are like, oh, okay, cool. I just dismantled your entire board. The next turn, it's all going to be back in play.
Yeah. And one of the main reasons for that is just simply the amount of inherent card draw in the deck. The deck ends up being so consistent because I don't remember the exact number, but like right now, I think it has about 58 cards that cycle in the entire deck. Lands, creatures, etc.
I bet you're just chomping at the bit. Every single time there's a new cycling set coming out, you're like, oh,
I'm very excited. Yes. And like a few other additional cards that help either improve your draws, like Alharmet's Archive, or help you draw in different ways. So it's just really hard to stop the deck once it's rolling because it can just draw so deep into its deck to find what it needs to address whatever's happening on the board.
100%.
Yeah. And, I appreciate that kind of like what you were saying, that because it continues to see support from recent printings. For example, there's like the new cycling cards, like Corey added a whole bunch of new cycling cards. But even like there's been a few Lord of the Rings cards that have cycling. It seems like Wizards is interested in adding a few more of those cards that like search for the lands, like the plane cyclings. Those make their way into this deck too, because that you keep wanting to find lands, especially as a 4-color deck. You really need to get those colors under you. Draw benefits are always big and active across all of everything that Wizards prints, so you see a lot of that. Discard benefits are also really important for this deck too. Currency Converter was a really fun card to be printed recently. And then even like
I played against cards. That one when you played that one. That was very, very. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. But at some point, I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And I was like, oh my goodness, the value that you were getting.
Oh yeah. Well, in that particular game, that enabled a turn 1 Hogaak. So
yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah. But and like even like cards that don't necessarily have the cycling keyword, but like Channel, the newer cards from Kamigawa. I've got the Sky Turtle in this deck that works really well. So. And then, of course, like any cards that interact well with the graveyard, the more recent Shieldred has worked really well, which is basically like a slower version of the Rise of the Dark Realms.
A second Rise of the Dark Realms on the back, I think it's the third lore counter,
Yeah, the third lore counter basically does that same exact thing.
You'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just appreciate for this deck, and it continues to be something that is always new and different after new sets, or at least I think about different ways of approaching it, and just has a strong connection for me. So
100%. Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so that is a forever deck for you. Let's talk about one of your fail decks now, because not everything's all sunshine and rainbows, right? I mean, there's gonna be times where you build a deck and you're like gung ho about it to start, and then not so much later. Yeah.
So on a similar vein, like one of the main reasons why cycling is so successful is that it has so much inherent card draw. And so like you don't have to spend as many slots focused on drawing cards, especially for like a commander like Kaidel that really wants to draw cards all the time. On a similar vein, I had a Noyan Dar deck for a while, which is a Noyan Dar Royal Shaper, 3 white and blue, legendary creature, Merfolk ally for 4/4. And he has a rather unique ability that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may put 3 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. And then if you do, that land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste that is still a land.
So basically like Awakening lands.
For sure.
I think before Awakening was a thing.
Actually, I think it was in the same set, but basically it was like...
But they didn't keyword it.
Yeah, they didn't keyword for him. But, basically... this, for me, because it's, I consider it more of like a fail or like a not forever deck, more because of my approach to building it. So again... Noyan Dar's ability meant that you didn't really have to focus as much on building in win cons into your deck. Him as the commander, as long as you kind of like kept him protected, all you had to do was keep casting spells, and then your lands would just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that would be your win con.
You also had Poison Wind in that one too. You had Inkmoth Nexus. I forgot.
Not in that one. That was Orvar.
Oh, that was Orvar. Oh, that's the other.
That's the other one. Yeah. But because you didn't have to spend as much card slots on the win cons, you could just send those card slots into more card draw, more control elements, more removal. And so in a similar way was a kind of a similar approach as the cycling deck, but in Noyan Dar in particular, it just kind of resulted in the game plan being very static and led to pretty more boring games because you were casting a lot of spells each turn, especially like draw effects, but it incentivized you to just basically control the board as much as possible until you got your land to like the size you wanted it to be, or enough to win the game, which led it to being like a lot of counter spells, a lot of just like removal spells that didn't lead to like super interesting or fun games, especially for your opponents. Because basically you just wanted to make sure that they didn't
no one else does anything. I've got lands that I hit you with.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with like how slow Noyan Dar's ability created like the power and toughness for your land creature, it just ended up being a slog that seemed to just not really have super fun games. I
mean, I enjoyed playing against Noyan Dar, and then actually I enjoyed a lot of the interactions. So like you had that one that's like, hey, like exile the creature, bring it back, whatever, draw, and then you don't have to discard or whatever. A lot of cool effects that worked really well with it. And again, like the first time I saw this commander, I didn't really think much of it at all. And then I saw your build, I'm like, oh gosh, that's scary. Okay.
And it had some like fun like little combos, like Contested Warzone and Mirror Weaver, really fun in this particular commander, but it just didn't happen enough, or it wasn't like a focus enough of the build for it to really come up that often. Or
the focus is more so control and draw, and slog it out essentially.
Yeah. So there are plenty of ways I'm sure other people can build Noyan Dar in a way that they feel like it would be a forever deck for them, but the way that I felt like was most efficient way of building the deck, or the way that suited me the best as far as like how I was playing, it got its time in the sun, and then it was time to shelve it. So
that happens. So well, let's all just pour one out to Noyan Dar, and we're gonna take a quick break.
He doesn't need more in the Royal though.
And we are back for another forever deck. Let everyone know why Hogaak, a card that was, I believe, banned in Modern, I think. Destroyed the Modern format, does pretty much nothing in Commander for the vast majority of playgroups out there, right? Most playgroups don't have a Hogaak deck, but maybe you should. Tell us about Hogaak.
Sure. So, obviously Hogaak is a 5 black-green legendary creature avatar. That's 8/8, has trample, and interestingly it says you can't spend mana to cast this spell, so rather unique. It does have Convoke and Delve though, and then it does specify you can cast Hogaak, Arisen Acropolis from your graveyard,
but not with mana.
Correct. Which worked really well in Modern and Legacy in manaless dredge decks.
They're like, oh yeah, no problem, I don't like using mana anyways.
Yeah, that wasn't a problem for them, but like in a Commander format, it's interesting. If you want a little bit of a deeper dive into the deck, you should watch the second, I think it was, Spicy.
Yes. It was a spicy deck.
Decks.
Yes.
So, that was an interesting experience for sure. But given that this Hogaak is actually a little bit more of a recent deck for me, recently built. But it immediately got a space on my forever list just simply with how it approached playing the game and the challenge of deck building, and honestly it was one that I was really proud of building to a point that it should actually works.
Well, and like the amount of tweaks that you make to it and the amount of just knowing the deck, essentially, like if you ever take Alek out early in a game, so you know what you should do if you're playing against Alek at an LGS or a Magic Fest or whatever, just everyone else gang up on Alek, take Alek out and see what happens. What happens is Alek pulls out Hogaak and then goldfishes it to ensure that you understand all the lines and all the different ones and how efficient it can be. And just literally the question I always ask Alek is essentially like, hey, like, okay, turn 1 or turn 2, because that is when Hogaak is coming down. So, which is insane for a 7-mana commander that you can't use mana on. And it's not like, oh, I got a spell that's like cheated out without paying its mana cost. It's like, no, I convoked and delved it on turn 1.
Yeah. This deck has a lot of decision trees, and so it's true. Yeah. I goldfish this deck when I'm eating breakfast. I goldfish this deck when I'm not sitting on the toilet. See, pretty much any time I have available, I will goldfish this deck just to make sure that I know what's happening.
This might be your forever deck.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, as I mentioned, part of the reason I love this deck is it approaches the game of Commander in just a very different way. The deck building process was really challenging, and also just simply piloting the deck is a bit of a challenge most of the time, but it's honestly just a breath of fresh air whenever I do it. The approaching the deck with the challenge of getting Hogaak on the battlefield on turn 1 or turn 2 if I can, and then trying to navigate the game afterwards. Oftentimes, once I get Hogaak out, I will not have a hand. Sometimes I will have 1 or 2 lands in play that's all I will have for the entire game.
Well, how many lands do you have in the deck?
I believe it's 17 lands total, and only like 5 or 6 actual functional lands that tap for
Don't
mana.
try this at home. Yeah, I mean, try it at home, but like with a professional. So like, utilize this list. Do not try to build your own. I mean, you can try to build your own.
If you make it better, please let me know.
Yeah, please.
I would love to see it.
Yes, reach out in the comments because.
And I will bow down.
My goodness,
would be amazing.
Trying to make a deck just work with 17 lands is absurd, and it works amazingly.
And surprisingly, this deck, continues to see additional support since I built it. Self-mill, like a lot of the creatures from Ixalan have the Explorer ability, where it worked really well for this deck of just milling things off the top. Fairy Dream Thief was a card from Wilds of Eldraine that works really well. The Surveil effect, and the fact that both of these are 1-drops
that can help convoke as well.
For
essentially.
sure.
So you're basically kind of getting like 2 mana out of it, basically, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the concept? You
get
a card in your graveyard, you get a creature in play, you are able to then convoke.
Yeah, because the 2 things that I need to happen to get Hogaak out, obviously, are to have 2 creatures on the battlefield and then 5 or more cards in the graveyard. So anything that does double duty of getting a creature on the board and a card in the graveyard is instantly considered for this deck.
100%.
And the fact that they continue to print cards that support this in some way or another, and also an additional cards that care about discarding or do discard, work really, really well for this deck. So
there's definitely someone at Wizards that also has a Hogaak deck, and they're like, let's just keep making more things that work well with it.
Yeah. Please continue to do so.
Keep doing it, person at Wizards. We see you.
Yes. We love you. It's amazing. So, I continue to love just goldfishing this deck, playing with friends who are okay with me getting a 8/8 out on turn 2.
It's amazing. And then it's just like, please, because usually, from what I've seen, it depends. The politics start, but also there have been times where Alek just literally rolls a dice and is like, hey, 1 through 2, 3 through 4, 5 through 6, and that's who he's going to attack, and then attack 2 more times, because that's how you get taken out.
Or surprise berserks them.
Or surprise berserk, and they're just gone right away. Yeah, surprise berserk, or Blanchwood, is it Blanchwood armor or whatever, like +3/+3, just getting to that 11 for a 2-shot combo, or not combo, but a 2-shot. It is an amazing deck. If you have not seen it work, make sure you check it out at some point. I'll try to remember to put all the links to all these decks in the description below.
For sure.
Okay, now we've talked about this amazing one, and I absolutely love the Hogaak deck. And again, if you ever play against, I'm just saying, you play against Alek at any point at LGS, or at MagicCon, just make sure you all gang up and take Alek out first so you can watch Alek.
It's the right play for sure.
Oh, I mean, not the Hogaak, just any other deck, so you can see Alek Goldfish, the Hogaak deck afterwards.
That'll work.
All right, next up, looks like we got a fail with Shirei, Shizo's Caretaker. I'm guessing you failed because you're like, it's an uncommon, don't like it anymore.
Yeah, it's budget, so it's not worth it.
This card is 8 cents. No.
Yeah, actually, this was probably my most painful, unsleeving of a commander. So
Noyan is over in the corner crying right now.
Noyan was great, but Shirei has been with me for a long time. This was my second commander deck I built.
I don't think I knew that was your second.
Yeah, and this was one that I absolutely loved to play with. So for those not familiar, Shirei Shizo's Caretaker is a 4 and a black legendary creature spirit, originally from the Kamigawa block as a 2/2. And it specifies whenever a creature with power 1 or less is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step if Shirei Shizo's Caretaker is still on the battlefield. So kind of a unique approach to a reanimator deck, but one that can be really powerful if built in the right way. And obviously
incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and obviously it's got the limitation of the power 1 or less, but there are plenty of cards nowadays that fit that.
Yeah.
And it's really not a problem anymore for this deck to kind of really go off. So obviously this deck lends itself to an aristocrats style of deck, and
I've never heard of that strategy.
Yeah, haven't you? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I don't believe you.
I think it's like the third, fourth most popular theme currently.
Yeah.
Very, very popular strategy. Just sacrifice things.
Yeah, it's super high in synergy, and it's also just really fun to play with because it's got a lot of decision trees, lots of different ways of approaching, and can lead to like really fun, unique board states.
And it can be difficult for your opponents to deal with those board states too, because a Wrath might actually hurt them.
So, yeah, for sure. And so like I felt like my build was really successful, but didn't really make it to my forever list, or I ultimately de-sleeved it at some point. And it's mostly just it was built into the way that Shirei's ability works. So a lot of reanimator decks, it has one big reanimate, or like Carador where you get to choose whichever creature. Shirei has that interesting effect where it brings everything back as long as it fits that limitations. And it's also not limited to your own turn. So you can do this on an opponent's turn as well. You sacrifice a creature during
the Seer on an opponent's turns.
Yeah, and then it comes back on their end step. So it's really powerful in that way that like anything that has important ETBs that you're caring about can happen every single turn. Like one of my favorite cards in this was Bottle Gnomes. Kind of like one of like a very strange card, but
janky card,
but it, like with Shirei in play, you gained 12 life.
12 life each turn on the table. Yeah,
each turn cycle.
Hilarious. Bottle Gnomes.
But the problem with that is that it meant that the deck was honestly just exhausting to play, and from what I'd heard from other people too, is like it was exhausting to play against, because I had to play. And when I was going off, I would be playing on every single person's turn, including my own.
With like 14 triggers.
Yeah, and then I'd also be forcing my opponents to sit through me going through all of those triggers whenever I was going off. So, and the fact that it was an aristocrats and a sacrifice and a discard style, it just made it worse. And it usually just didn't win quickly. So my opponents would normally have to sit through several turn cycles of me doing things on their turn, making them sacrifice their creatures, making them discard their hands, where it just wasn't fun for them. And it meant where it was just like they were wondering whether or not I could kill them. And I was like, this will take a few more turns of you just sitting there and not doing anything.
Yeah. So. I think that's what commander players, and actually I don't know if I ever played against your Shirei deck, but I think commander players, myself included, kind of like the more and more you play, the more and more you learn potentially to just take into account the rest of the play group, essentially. And so like when you start off, like you might be like, Jodah, we'll get to that here in a little bit. But like I'm just gonna do this massive turn, and it's gonna take 45 minutes, and everyone's gonna enjoy it.
Well, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with playing to win, because that's kind of that's the goal of the game. But at a certain point, you appreciate the fact that you're sitting down at a table with your friends or people that you don't necessarily want to make angry or make upset by the way that you play. So
some of the decks we build though.
Thankfully we've got a lot of patient friends. But
very
just anything that I could do to not make it even worse, and also just allowed me to gives space to try another graveyard deck.
Yeah,
Hogaak.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Losing one deck opens up a door for another one.
For sure.
So yeah, there you go. Okay, and with that, let's take another break. And we are back, and now we're going to talk about, well, 7 things.
Yeah.
7
Or 20.
or 20. Yeah. Dwarves.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that commander staple. 7 dwarves.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us about your forever deck, 7 dwarves.
Yeah.
Oh, this is your, is it Riku?
Yeah, so this is Riku, and the deck is built around the creature 7 dwarves. For those not familiar, and I'm not surprised you're not, it's a 1 and a red for a dwarf creature. That's 2/2. And it specifies that 7 dwarves gets +1/+1 for each other creature named 7 dwarves you control, and a deck can have up to 7 cards named 7 dwarves. So this is a really fun, kind of flavorful card from the original Eldraine set. But this kind of came up as a challenge idea between Eddie and I when we attended the Chicago Command Fest. And we just happened to run up against a player that happened just to be including seven dwarves in their mono red deck. And it just kind of sparked for us the idea of like, can we build something around this? And it took me a while to actually get something together that worked. But after building this and after playing it for a while, it's just really become like a deck that I gravitate towards when I just want to have fun.
It's just fun. It's just fun to see how many of them you get to play, because again, yeah, you get 7 into play. That's nice. They'd be like what, like 9/9s essentially?
Yeah.
Each other, so they'd be 8/8s. So but when you have 20 in play, which is not the expectation, then they're all massive.
It's a bit of a flavor fail, but we get over it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you've got Sleepy, Happy. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Doc. I don't know.
Happy 2,
Happy 2, Happy 3, Snorri, Smelly. He was making up names.
And so ultimately, this is just like a fun approach to like a copy deck. Riku, obviously, his ability helps you create copies, but got a bunch of other spells and effects in the deck that copy 7 dwarves that are on the battlefield or continue to create copies of them. And, this is mostly a budget or a low power deck for more relaxed games. But I just love the fact that whenever this deck comes out and whenever people see like the direction that the deck is going, it just sparks so much fun conversation. And I also get to play like weird cards that people don't see very often, especially in an EDH deck where it's singleton format. Playing cards like Pack Hunt or Doubling Chant doesn't often come up.
Let's go through those cards because I've seen this card before from a long time ago, but never seen it in a commander game. Pack Hunt, a source for 4 mana, search your library for up to 3 copies of target creature, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library. Not useful in commander ever because it's singleton format, but with this it's like, oh cool, I can go get 3 7 dwarves.
I mean, like Relentless Rats players or Shadowborn Apostle, they might be familiar with these cards, but generally you don't see that outside of those decks very often.
Not at all. Doubling Chant is a source for 6 mana for each creature you control. You may search life for a creature with the same name, put them at a battlefield, then shuffle. So basically just cheating to play even more 7 dwarves. That's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. And, again, similar to the other cards I've talked about or decks I've talked about, this deck continues to also see additional support, in recent cards.
So you're saying that there's a 7 dwarves player at Wizards as well?
Yeah.
A Hogaak player and a 7 dwarves player.
Whoever at Wizards is simpatico with me, let's keep this train rolling.
Keep it coming.
I love it. It's been amazing. But like March of Burgeoning Life from Kamigawa, the Sea Double from that.
I forgot that card be so good.
That is so good. And even just like this was budget when I first built this, but like Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
that $15, not quite budget anymore. Yeah.
Not quite, but just like
did that like dominate standard or something? I don't know.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Anyways,
but just has resulted in just being a fun deck that I always love to pull out and have a good time with people.
It's absolutely a really fun concept. Absolutely love it, and I love seeing it when we play against it because I just again when I'm losing to it, I'm like, well, that was really cool. I got like 14 dwarves out and smacked me in the face.
Yeah.
Great. What's that? Now the next step is getting altars with all like the Sleepy, Doc. I don't know. Sleepy, Happy. Comment below on how I'm missing all the names to all the dwarves. Sleepy,
and list a bunch
Doc.
of ideas for ones beyond the
there you go
too, so that way you can make tokens of those.
Perfect.
Eric, I'll need your help on that.
Eric, you need to make 45 dwarf tokens.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, let's talk about your. Is this your final fail deck?
Yeah.
Okay, your final fail deck, and that is your Harmless Offering deck.
Yeah. So Harmless Offering is commanded by Child of Alara.
Okay.
And so, kind of similar to Seven Dwarves, this was an attempt to kind of like approach the game in a little bit of a different way and just have like a little fun with it.
Oh, yeah.
Cause some kind of like fun conversations to have. And really this was an approach to winning via like insta kill or win effects, such as like donating Lich's Mastery or 9 lives.
Yep.
And then in some way sacrificing Child of Alara to destroy that enchantment, so that way it's
the owner loses.
Eliminated an opponent, that particular opponent. So, my hope with that deck was to like be like, oh, let's play the politics, let's like have some fun with this, and then talk about like spark some conversation about like the fun way that this wins the game. But kind of the problem with the actual execution of the deck is that so many of these cards, you needed to make them happen at the same time. So it ended up being a really large mana commitment. Especially with Child of Alara too, just being 5 colors, and needing
plays
to have
5
that.
color commanders?
Can we think of a person? Might be hiding. But a lot of times, what the game plan was to get Child of Alara out and then play the Lich's Mastery and then donate it. But the way that the game actually like rolled out or like progressed was me feeling like I needed to pop the Child of Alara ability at some point just to clear the
pop
board.
The space baby.
Yeah.
To destroy everything.
Yeah, destroy everything. Yeah. Terminology there being a little sensitive. But then doing so didn't really allow me to push my game plan along. And so oftentimes it just led to me just simply repeating that process.
Controlling the board
over and over and over. So like no one had permanence in play. Everyone was kind of upset that they didn't really keep permanents around. And
Child of Alara is everyone's favorite commander.
Yeah, and then also just like me not winning after that, just led games just to be like a really massive grind.
And that's kind of like an interesting thing about how a deck can fail is that you have like these aspirations for a deck and thinking how it's actually going to play out, and then it doesn't play out in that way.
Right.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I felt before too.
Yeah, and then also there was actually a weird element where sometimes I would have a situation where I could get my combo or, have success with my game plan really early, and then I would eliminate a player, but then sometimes I wouldn't be able to follow that up with continued effects on the rest of the table. And so sometimes then that would lead to one person just sitting there on their own and
Goldfishing a Hogaak deck.
Goldfishing a Hogaak deck. But then they couldn't play, and then like the rest of the game took, an hour. So,
sure.
Just again thinking about like the way that the table interacted with the way the process of the game went along, it wasn't super fun after a while, and so that's ultimately ended up being why I took this one apart.
I love the concept of it, and I kind of wish it would play out in the way that it's envisioned. It just it did. I played against the deck a couple times, and it turned into. There's a couple of scenarios where it's just Child of Alara pop, Child of Alara pop, just like, and so it would be a very controlling deck, and then you could take a player out in a very spicy way, but it's kind of, again, how you envision a deck might not be how it actually plays out, which is just kind of something that's and that kind of, it's a little bit bittersweet to take that one apart. Then it's like, oh, you did it, but you didn't do it in the way that I thought. Yeah,
and I can say that I had the best intentions with the way that I wanted the deck to work and to interact in a social way, but just actually it working in practice, and it might just be the way that I chose to play the deck as well. I tend to be a little bit more of a controlling player anyway. Just led to be less a bringer of joy than I was hoping.
Oh,
so.
Well, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed seeing the deck. I didn't enjoy necessarily the 18th time Child of Alara destroyed everything.
Yeah. So
it's a fun one though. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, then we'll jump quickly into my picks. And we are back, and we're gonna go through these pretty quick because I've talked about a lot of my decks in a lot of episodes, and I want to kind of keep this a little brief because you probably already heard me talk your ear off about some of my decks, and I was really happy to hear about all of Alek's amazing decks, and I'm sure you were as well.
But this is so interesting because for me, you create so many different decks over the course of your career playing Magic that I'm just so interested. Like, what makes a forever deck for Mitch, or what things like really take it off the table?
I think it's just mainly like for a forever deck, it's like, what do I keep going back to just play? And like, I found myself like, what do I keep going back to play? Phelddagriff's one of the first things that came to my mind. It's one of my oldest decks, essentially, and that's why it is. When I started off, Phelddagriff was a more budget-friendly card than it is. I guess it's $7 right now. Was it reprints or something like that? I thought it was $15 at one point. Regardless, Phelddagriff, the entire deck, like, if you had to go through like my collection and say, okay, what deck overall like costs the most? I think my Phelddagriff deck technically does, because some of the cards went up in price quite a bit. That just shows you kind of how long this deck's been around. That being said, Phelddagriff is just a very janky commander. It is something that like has no use at all, really.
Giving benefits to your opponents doesn't progress your game.
Very strange. So it is I believe a Phelddagriff. I'm looking at the old non-Oracle text printing. 4/4 Summon Legend. I think it's a Phelddagriff. For 1 in Bant colors, pay a white. It gets flying until end turn. Great. Except an opponent gains 2 life. Yeah. You pay a blue. You bounce it back to your hand. Cool. You can protect it. Oh, but target opponent may draw a card. Very important. May
Very
right
relevant,
there.
Yep.
Pay a green. Trample on a turn. Put a hippo token into play under opponent's control. It's a 1/1. So basically, you are doing 3 things to either give Phelddagriff flying, bounce it back to your hand, or give it trampled. And it's a 4/4. So like, it's not really doing anything. What you're doing, though, is you're going to be giving your opponents hippos. Or elephants. Sorry, I said elephants. You're giving them hippos, and then you utilize those hippos in a way where you're saying like, hey, you're my buddy, right? You're my buddy?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you hippos. You swing at my other opponents. We'll work together, okay? If you need a blocker, I'll give you a hippo. You can block with it, okay?
Yeah.
So basically, you make a buddy, and then you have that buddy take out the other players, and then you stab the buddy in the back at the end of the game. And everyone enjoys it. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, Phelddagriff, I like to play political control. Some players play group hug, but yeah, I keep going back to Phelddagriff. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And just giving players hippos is just fun. Okay, so I've enjoyed that one.
Well, it creates like interesting board states because you have manipulated the game in such a way where people are unsure of like where to go or how to threat assess.
You also have some people who are dependent on the hippos. They think they're going to keep getting the hippos, and then they do one thing to upset you, and then you're like, no, you're not getting more hippos.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
like, give me hippos.
Like, now Eddie's my best friend. You get all the hippos. Go take out Alek. That's how it works. All right, next up. This one surprised me, actually. Mr. Orfeo the Boulder. I'm going to be completely honest. When I built this, I was excited about it, but I didn't think that I would enjoy it this much. I didn't think it'd be a forever deck. Like, I'd be like, yeah, I'll enjoy it. I'll get some big creatures and play. I'll swing. It'll be fun. But Mr. Orfeo, I absolutely love. I made like I think I call this one Hotline Fling, essentially, where I just get creatures out. I get the massive. I don't even care about getting them through in combat, essentially, for most part. Like, if I get them through, great. That's cool. But if not, I'm just going to chuck them at your face with a fling effect and hopefully have multiple effects, essentially, to take advantage of that. So it's a lot of fun. A 2/4 Rhino Warrior for 4 mana and Jund. Whenever you attack, double target creature's power until turn. So again, literally, you don't even have to attack with the actual creature that you're doubling the power of. Got a lot of creatures that are just inherently large. You're just getting to play. That what's that like? It's like Golgari. It's like an 11/10 that like whenever you attack or block with it, sacrifice a creature. Can't remember its name.
Bull Strider or something like that. No,
I don't know. Strider, you have massive creatures with massive downsides, essentially, potentially, that you don't care. You don't care what the downside is because it's just like, oh, just have big creature that have power and play. Double it, maybe double it again. Have a 40 power creature, chuck it at someone. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Well, and this deck has always been so impressive to me just because you can never like turn your back on this deck after a certain point.
Yeah, you kind of can't.
Because you sit there and you're like, okay, he doesn't really have anything on his board. I can be okay. I can look at someone else. And then as soon as you do, you've got this like 40/40 hippo that's flying at your face because it's been flung at you.
Exactly. That's exactly how the deck needs to work. Yes. So yeah, it is, again, an unexpected forever deck that I really fell in love with. And again, I keep gravitating toward that one because I do think it can play at different kind of power levels where it can. I mean, it's not going to just win right. It's not a really quick deck where it can just win right. It does take some setup, but also like it can just surprisingly take someone out essentially that might think that they're safe and they're not. So, yeah.
And also the amount of groveling I've seen opponents do for this deck has been amazing because they realize what's happening and then they're like, please don't fling at me, please.
Well, I've got to fling at one player, so you can make deals. You may make deals.
This is your surprise political deck.
It's quite funny. Yeah. And I'm terrible at politics, but when it comes to a politic that's like an offer they can't refuse because it's like, no, I'll just take you out. Like I have to take one of you 3 out. One of you is going to get taken out. Who wants to make a deal? All right, next up we got Garth One Eye. this deck really grew on me. I absolutely love it because, again, we talked about kind of like in our, like with unique decks, essentially, like ones that utilize something that's not typically utilized heavily in Commander. And like enchant lands really aren't all that utilized. Like the good one, like no, the good ones, like a wild growth or like a fertile ground maybe, because like those are lower to the ground. But like a lot of the higher end ones, like not so much. Like when it comes to ramping in green, you have access to green already. You're just gonna go get lands, right? That's just because it's a safer way to ramp essentially. And most players aren't destroying all lands. If someone destroys one of your lands though that has a bunch of wild growth type effects on it, you lose all those. So that's kind of like the downside of that. That being said, as soon as Wizards, I think it was in Modern Horizons 2, maybe, when they printed all those bridges that are indestructible, essentially. Getting indestructible lands in play and just enchanting them with an absurd amount of enchantments is hilarious, I think. And so basically, amazing. I built a deck where I just like to untap things. And the entire concept was like, okay, let's get a bunch of untap effects. I'll untap this land an absurd amount of times. I'll untap other things. I'll untap Garth, and then just do some crazy things. I really like the deck. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For me.
And this is like the one deck that utilizes those handmade tokens the most.
Yes.
Well, and whenever they come out, we know we're dead.
That's probably true. There's two of my decks so far are like handmade tokens. So yeah, I got a bunch of hippos in the hippo deck, and then with this I do have the handmade tokens for Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, Black Lotus. I've still never cast Shivan Dragon.
Yeah, well, hey, it's okay, but
I still do the token though, just in case.
Yeah, it's kind of be there. How many tokens do you have now created that are just sitting around?
A lot.
Yeah. Too many.
Incalculable amount. All right, and then the final forever deck that I want to talk about is kind of actually this one. I'll just say Villainous Wealth, because I started off actually Tassiger Villainous Wealth, and then being the degenerate that I am, I went to 5-color Jodah Eternal. Because I'm like, what's better than 3 colors, Sultai? 5 colors. Yeah. So Villainous Wealth is a source for X in Sultai colors. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of the library. You may cast any of her spells and convert mana cost X less among them without paying the mana cost. Basically, dump an absurd amount of mana into this, target a player, and say, give me all your good stuff. But the way that I built it actually is quite fun, because it's a little harder to stop. Because basically, the problem with this is if someone just counters that, it's like, oh no, you countered my giant Villainous Wealth.
Yep.
What I do is I like to say, well, I've got a Villainous Wealth. Maybe I'll put like 9 mana into that X, and I'll copy it with a bunch of other spells like 5 times. So then I've got like 5 Villainous Wells out there targeting different players, and I get all the best things off the top libraries and just have fun. And it's kind of fun just to see, actually, so this is one thing where it's like, this is where the deck can kind of be unfun, where like I need other players to tell me if it's being unfun, because it takes an absurd amount of time to resolve all this obnoxiousness. Because like if I get 18 cards off the top of each player's library, there's probably a bunch of interacting things, a bunch of ETBs, and this is when players kind of typically scoop and just say like, okay, like we get it, you have this giant board state, like you win. Okay.
Yeah, that's usually been our strategy. It's just like, okay, we're good. You got it.
You did the thing. Congratulations, you did the thing.
Yeah.
Yay.
Sometimes we wonder like how many times you've won simply by casting Villainous Wealth. Yeah. You don't even have any
anything,
copy effects in your hand. It's just like you cast Villainous Wealth. We're like,
done,
okay, we're done.
Done. Actually, one really quick, really funny aside. There was one night we were playing at a friend's house, and I beat Eddie in a game with Villainous Wealth, and then another guy who was named Mitch as well also beat Eddie with a Villainous Wealth deck in the same night, and we didn't even talk about it ahead of time. Hilarious.
He was talking about that for a week.
It was really funny. All right, anyways, Mitch, if you're watching, hi. Anyways, let's talk really quick about the decks that did not make the forever list, because as always, there are going to be some failures in there.
And these surprised me.
First up, well, so this one, okay, I have to be honest, I have not desleeved this. It has failed. It has failed, but I've not desleeved it. So I don't know if that counts or not. But I consider it a fail, because Joy Weather Captain, I've done an episode about this before. It's like the one deck I never play. Like I can't play it anymore. I literally cannot. I was so proud of this deck when I built it, and this is probably the deck that I literally spent the most time tinkering with it and getting it perfect, because this deck just can be absolutely absurd. Again, like I wanted to show, like on a budget, you can do some crazy things.
And it does crazy things.
Yeah. Whenever you cast a Historic spell, draw a card. Now that counts. Legendaries and sagas, but what we care about is artifacts, because we're both degenerates when it comes to artifacts, and you can do some crazy things with them.
Yeah.
And so basically you're doing Artifact Storm, absurdly long, like 30-minute turns, and maybe you win at the end of it. Right?
Maybe.
Most of the time, but sometimes you don't. Regardless, this was my, I think, 3rd or 4th deck I ever built in Commander, and didn't realize that, taking a 30-minute turn is a no-no. So all the other players at the table maybe don't care about how innovative this deck is.
I mean, between the two of us,
we care. We're like, oh, that's awesome.
It's fine.
Yeah, when you played your eggs, I was just like, I just love watching, again, like just how quickly you can go through on eggs. Other people might not appreciate that, but you know what? I think it's art.
Well, that game that we had on camera, you know,
yeah.
I went off on turn 3, and I felt lucky being able to do that because I knew that the person sitting to my left who was playing his Jodah deck was likely to go off that same turn anyway.
Maybe a little later, but yes. So yeah, anyways, this one I will consider fail. Again, it has not been de-sleeved. I have it available just in case I play against a group that's like, hey, we're playing our highest power decks. I want to make sure I have something. So I literally have, I don't think I've played this within a year, actually. I think it's been over a year since I played the deck. I have it not de-sleeved, but to me it is a fail because I will not play it. I have not played it unless very specific circumstances come about. Okay.
Fair.
Moving on, another one for a very similar reason. Marwyn the Nurturer. Apparently, I don't learn from my mistakes. Marwyn the Nurturer is a 1/1 elf druid for 2 and 8 green. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under control, you get a counter on Marwyn. Tap added amount of green equal to Marwyn's power. Now, many players out there might build elf tribal. I do not. I think I probably have like Llanowar elves in those like in the deck, but other than that, there's like no elves in there. It's just like no, you just get a bunch of spells that give counters.
Yeah.
And then you just give pump effects too, and then you untap. And then you just say, oh, okay, Marwyn, tap for 20 mana. Oh, cool, this single green mana spell that says untap creature. Cool, do it again. Cool, cast a spell that draws cards. Cool, do it again. And then, yeah, basically storm again. Mono green storm, though, so I thought it was okay. But no, again, like it's just making a 30-minute turn that players don't want to sit through.
I mean, it's impressive, and like no one sees it coming either.
Yeah, and if you take players out with a hurricane, that's hilarious, right? Like, yeah, green has a fireball effect. I mean, you have to be at more life than them, unless you just want to tie the game. But yeah, essentially, yeah. So yeah, I learned my lesson after those two. I think. I don't think I currently have any storm decks technically in there. I mean, maybe. All right. Moving on, Progenitus. Now, this one was one that I threw together because, like, I used to play... Okay, we keep talking about being a degenerate player every now and then, but I played Turbo Fog, which I thought was hilarious. Like, that got me back into Magic. That was just, like, an amazing concept of, like, oh, you can just demolish your opponent's Jund deck with just a Fog again and again and again. And even though they spent $1,000 on their Jund deck, your $20 Fog deck can just beat them because you keep drawing into Fogs and stopping them from hitting you ever. So I decided, you know what? What's a funny commander with a Fog deck? I'll just do Progenitus because, like, okay, there's the win condition, right? Yeah. Progenitus can take players out quite easily. 10-10, double reward cost, protection from everything, which, I mean, sounds like when you first start Magic, like, that sounds like it can never be dealt with ever. And it's like, okay, no, Wrath of God takes it out.
Yeah,
there's ways to take it out, but... And also, Shuffle Library, you're not going to do that. But yes, essentially, you have a 10 power creature that's like, your opponents can never block it, and there's ways to pump it, yes. You can't, like, attach equipment to it, but there's, like, an Anthem effect or, you know. Yeah. Finest Hour, I think, is a really good card with it, obviously. Yeah. There's ways to make it a one-shot or a two-shot, and so basically just making it a Fog deck, I thought it was really fun. It kind of didn't work out the way I thought it would, though. Like, some people thought Progenitus, which is a big, some people like, okay, they gotta be doing something crazy with this Progenitus, so, like, I need to target them right away, like, because they've never seen a Progenitus deck before. I've actually never seen it. I've never played against a Progenitus deck, except for
I've seen a few, but it usually they're just simply for the colors or the fact that, like, they can fall back on the Progenitus being a giant creature that's difficult to deal with.
Makes sense.
But
yeah, so I either, like, kind of got too much heat too early, or also, like, once players realized that it was just all Fogs, trying to manage 3 players with Fogs is really, really tough. Yeah, it just is.
Well, and this is like, you simply will just run out of resources before they do.
Most likely. Yeah. So yeah, basically it ended up just getting taken apart because, like, I just kind of didn't have fun with it. Like, I thought it was going to be this one thing. I really do. I want to make a Turbo Fog deck work. That's not just like bring Spore Frog back again and again and again. It's probably the easiest way to do it. But, like, I want to make a Turbo Fog deck work. I might try to hash something out at some point. Let's chat.
I still think you need to try Questing Beast.
I built a Questing Beast deck.
Yes.
All right. And then finally, my final fail is Golos Tidus Pilgrim.
Now, can you really call this as a fail?
It's a fail because it got banned.
Yeah.
That's it. That is it. I had to de-slave it. Actually, that's not even true. I actually have.
I was gonna say.
I still have a Golos deck, but I changed it into like the like 40 card base and then like a 60 card rotation that like changes based on like 160 card shuffling.
Which is really cool.
It's really fun because then you get random things. But like again, you need to ask your playgroup ahead of time if they're okay with you playing it. Golos got banned for a reason. And yeah, it failed because it got banned. That's the reason I'm saying it. No other reason. It's an amazing commander. I love you, Golos. I miss you so much.
Yeah, it's.
So you can leave it at that,
yeah. I'll just leave it there.
We'll just leave it at that.
That was a good place to end it.
All right, so thank you so much, Alek, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Comment below with your thoughts on all of our crazy decks. Let us know what of your decks are your favorite decks. Which ones are your forever decks? Do you also goldfish your decks incessantly throughout the day? Just whenever you have time.
Yes.
Yes.
And if anyone can make it better, Hogaak, please let me know. I would love to see
in the
it.
comments. We'll be like, I've got 14 lands in my Hogaak deck, and I get Hogaak on turn 1 with a 69% rate. Always 72% if it's Wednesday. Like,
yes.
What? How? How does that work?
On days ending in Y.
On days ending in Y. Yeah. But yeah, let us know in the comments below. What are your forever decks? What are your fail decks? Yeah, thanks again for joining me, Alek.
Thanks, all.
And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.